Hello, Community Bible Church. I hope you're all doing well. For anyone watching this video who does not know me, my name is Seth Gheen, and I'm the Associate Pastor of Discipleship here at CBC. Well, in the following video clips, we have something really special for you. A little while ago, myself and all the other pastors, we sat down and we brainstormed together what are ways that we can reach out to and help you all, the church body, during this time of the coronavirus lockdown. And one of the ideas that we came up with was to address not just the spiritual, but also try to speak to the mental, the physical, the emotional difficulties that some are facing during this time of imposed social isolation. Now, fortunately for us, we're blessed to have a member of our church who is just the right person to have this kind of conversation with. Many of you probably know Dr. Jim Johnson. Perhaps you've seen him around church back when we used to meet together, him and his wife Cheryl. Dr. Johnson is a board-certified Christian counselor. He is a licensed and ordained pastor, and he also holds a PhD in marriage and family. He was kind enough to share some of his time with us, and what you're going to see are shorter clips of a longer conversation between Dr. Johnson and myself about these very issues. We've broken those up into more bite-sized clips. When you look at the title, you're going to see which specific questions we're talking about. We hope that you enjoy, that these are beneficial to you. Well, Jim, thanks again for being with us here today. Let's start by talking about social isolation. We live in a digitalized social world. And by that, I'm referring to things like Facebook, where we might say we're really social, but oftentimes we're not actually seeing anybody face to face. But now, for the first time in my life, and I think a lot of people's lives, I think everybody's life right now, we have an actual imposed physical social isolation. You can't gather in more than 10 people. Yeah. And so for a lot of people, for the first time in their lives, they're in this prolonged period. And I pity the extroverts. I'm not one of them, but it must be really rough on them. But even I, as an introvert, it's like, man, this is tough. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to be forcibly cut off. I get to see my wife and kids all the time, and that's great. But you can't just go out to, the other day I was like, I think I'll go see a movie. Then I remembered, no, you won't. Yeah. All the movie theaters are closed. Yeah. So people are struggling with that. And it's also a strange thing because it's the first time. So let's talk about social isolation a little bit. And I'm just to steer the conversation, I'm not talking about, somebody who's involuntarily put in a holding cell or left alone on an island for a long period of time, something like that. Just the situation where we are in now, where maybe you have a few people in your house, but you're not out broadly socializing, and it's been that way for a while, and it's going to continue to be that way for a little while. What are some of the potential harmful effects that kind of social isolation can have on us?
Some of the things that we know about being isolated socially have come out through multiple tests, multiple research, multiple surveys. One survey I know of was over 580,000 people were studied on what happens in isolation, and not just short-term, but long-term. We could go through some of the long-term effects, but I don't think they apply, as you were saying, to this situation. Yet, some of the things that we go through when we're isolated really do apply. Feeling lost, feeling alone, feeling frustrated, feeling depressed, feeling discouraged, irritated. Those kinds of things all kind of come to the surface. A sense of dismay, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of, what am I going to do? For an introvert, it's a little bit easier. For an extrovert, it's a little bit harder, but we all experience it just the same. And, one of the ways I think graphically about the impact of the symptoms of being isolated is to look at Castaway and Tom Hanks sitting on that island and what he went through. And, he's got an ice skate in his mouth and he's banging it, knocking his teeth out and yelling, Wilson, yeah. Wilson. Now, for most, that's probably not what's going to happen. But to some degree, those are some of the feelings that we feel. We start to become very sentimental about wrapping things and holding on to them, or we become frustrated talking to ourselves, and then we're thinking we're kind of crazy. Those are all some of the symptomology. We were created to be in relationship. Part of why God created us was to learn to love. A very, very interesting study that was done out there by a man, a Nobel Peace Prize winning scientist, Eric Kendall, who studied human brains and animal brains, and after 40 years makes a statement with no particular bone to pick with religion. He says that every dendron, every neuron, every cell of the human brain was designed to do one thing and one thing only. Of course, now my ears are really perked forward. And he says, to love. To be loved and to love others. So some of the negative effect of being isolated is we lose that sense of being loved or being okay and being safe.
Let me clarify here, because I got to say, and this only applies to people at home with their wife and kids or their husband and kids, that it's interesting because I find with this period of social isolation, it's actually harder to love and love well to the people that I'm constantly around. And so what would you speak to for that as well? For those, and I think that's probably the case for quite a few, that there are some that are completely by themselves, but a lot are, you're socially isolated with a very small group of people or just one person like your spouse. And I don't know the psychology behind it. All I know is that tempers have been a little higher in my house than usual. And not just between Dana and I, but even between the kids and us.
Sure.
And a lot of times we'll have a little spat and it's just like, all right, we just need to go outside. You know, everybody's tired of being around each other too much.
Sure.
So that need to love and that need to be around people, why is it that even when we're around people we love for a long period of time and we have to be there, sometimes that actually seems to cause more friction? Is that just because we don't have enough variety of people we're seeing? I don't know.
Well, there's two sides. We're talking about isolation, not being able to be in the kinds of things that we normally do. And then the side that you're talking about is being cooped up together with people who are frankly just irritating. You know, I have a...
Not all the time, but you know, eventually. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I'm the grandfather of a 7-year-old who lives with us. I've been experiencing that.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly, and there are times when you go over there, I'm going over here, and that's where we got to leave it. So when we deal with that, it's the realization that you're going to be irritable and frustrated. You kind of prepare yourself mentally that this is going to be hard. An extra measure of patience is needed. An extra measure of learning to calm yourself down. One of the things I like to do is I like to teach people to read the inside of your dashboard. Start seeing what's going on before you splash it off on somebody else. The dashboard is going to tell you what's going on. I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm irritated. Start seeing the inside. And frankly, Seth, you and I as guys are lousy at that. Our brains don't work that way. The feminine brain sees more easily the emotions that she feels. 450 words in the English language to describe feelings. She operates in anywhere from 62. One guy in the back of the room one time said, 500. Yeah, probably so. I operate in 5. I'm mad, I'm glad, I'm sad, I'm hungry, and something else. So when we can learn to read the inside of the dash, I'm irritated, I'm upset, I'm frustrated. Okay, then what we can do is we can take the time to slow things down, start building that action line out, and letting you manage the situation instead of the situation managing you. Especially for parents, one of the things that I always encourage parents to do is to learn to see the water building up in the dam. And instead of letting your action line be up here at number 8, where, Johnny, it's time to come in. Johnny, it's time to come home. Johnny, you better hurry up. Johnny, you better get yourself in here. You get in here right now or your dad's gonna, you see how that action line's going up and up? Learn to get that action line down lower. So in other words, Johnny, first warning, second warning, consequence. Start to manage the children instead of letting them manage you. Now, I know that a lot of wives and moms are listening, and they know far more about managing kids than you and I. I give them kudos out for that. But at the same time, it's just being reminded of these principles. Keep that action line low. Don't let us all manage you, but start to manage them. Timeouts work so good. And it's a moment of quiet. I think timeouts were created for parents. You're not putting the child in timeout. You're putting yourself in timeout.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
So manage it quickly. See it coming, and then manage it quickly. I think it's time that you go to your room. Let's just take a timeout.
Yeah. Yeah, I said that many times, especially my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
I'll put her in her room and say, "You're not in trouble, but
Yeah.
Dad needs some space.
Yes.
So don't come out for a little while."
Yes.
And she seems to actually understand fairly well that it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I've kind of pushed him as far as it's healthy to push him, and now we just need some space, and everything's going to be fine. So
Yeah.
So there's social isolation of those who may be totally alone, who, it's not like everybody has a family, a wife and kids, and they might be really struggling with the need to be around people, the feeling unloved like you were talking about earlier. And then there's social isolation where you're isolated with the same small number of people. And that can cause just friction. Even though you dearly love each other, you got to just recognize this is going to cause more friction. It's going to cause a potential flare of tempers, and you just need to be, as you put it, read your dashboard, be aware of that. Thank you for watching this video. We trust that it was beneficial to you. If you have future topics or questions that you would like us to address with Dr. J, then you can email them to this email. You should see it right below my finger. We'll be happy to take a look at those and see if we can cover them in future conversations. Thank you.